Welcome back to another Fireside Chat as part of our Global Supply Chain Week. I'm Kaylee Nix here for FreightWaves, and we're talking to Vice President of Sales and Operations for Irby Utilities, Korby Keeney, out of Fort Worth. How are you doing today, Korby?
Oh, I'm awesome. I'm awesome. Thank you for the
Thanks
opportunity.
for being here. We really appreciate hearing some
Mm,
insight from our folks on the energy side of things. So, first things first, give us a little bit of background about you and your background in the energy industry.
Okay, well, I work for Irby Utilities, and we are an electrical distributor for the utility sector. So the high voltage guys, we provide material services and logistical services for utilities across the country. I am a regional vice president of sales and operations for Irby and maintain a territory of 7 states from Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana.
So you guys have a lot of people centered around the Gulf Coast, specifically around Houston and the oil industry down there. Tell me a little bit about the landscape of the energy industry right now, especially along the Gulf Coast and in the Texas Panhandle.
Yeah, so it's very volatile right now, and especially um, with the natural disasters that we've had this year, we are having a difficult time getting material. And as you know, utilities can't build infrastructure and bill their customers if they don't have material. And it has been a crazy year. And the panhandle of Texas is not quite as bad as the coast. Um, but as you know, everything that happens across the country that is a detriment to material supply, it really affects everybody. So, yeah.
So you talk about 2020 being a crazy year, and it was actually a record year for billion-dollar disasters for the United States. And of course, the Gulf Coast, it seemed like it had a target on its back. Louisiana, the coast of Louisiana was impacted by, I believe it was three landfalling hurricanes, two of them being major
Mhm.
hurricane status. Did any of your customers see specific impacts from those storms?
We had, so we have branches located all along the coast of the U.S., from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Florida and in Houston, even. And the first hurricane, which I believe was Hannah, devastated two of our largest customers down there. One of them lost, they had no power to any customer. So about the time they got the power back on, another one would hit. It seems yeah, it was a crazy year.
And I'm sure, of course, that the pandemic only increased those effects that you guys saw, whether that be from personnel shortages or just the inability to get people together to create that recovery. How did that impact you guys?
Oh, absolutely. Luckily, most of the restoration effort we were doing was outside. So it was not as bad as it could have been. We maintained, social distancing and we wore masks, but as you know, the risk is just not as bad if you're outside and you keep that distance. So it was not huge, a huge detriment.
Which that's really encouraging to hear because we've heard a lot from
Mhm.
other folks in the logistics and manufacturing industry talking about having to move to working from home, whether that be in a brokerage or anyone who manages that
Mhm.
transportation, to even the manufacturing industry taking a hit with people not being able to work in factories. So
Mhm.
it's super good that you guys
Mhm.
had the
Yeah.
ability to stay keeping people's lights on because you
Mhm.
guys are outside.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you guys have a lot of your customer base centered in that Houston area. Can you speak to me a little bit about how you guys handled recovery from Hurricane Harvey, which is, of course, one of the biggest disasters to strike Houston in recent memory?
Mhm. Yeah, so our largest customer in Houston is the investor-owned utility down there, CenterPoint Energy, and we have an alliance with those guys, so we supply them 100% of their material. Um, their main distribution center flooded. So, as you can imagine, that created a whole set of um, additional plans that we had to kick into gear because we couldn't do what we normally did. We brought in close to 75 employees from across the company. We engaged our fleet and our fleet partners to help us, and we moved inventory out of that central distribution center to lay down yards, and we're able to operate a little further north than what we had to. But it was crazy.
So Irby has its own fleet that's responsible for actually moving the things that your utility customers need, correct?
We do.
So tell me a little bit about
We
the importance of accurate forecasting when it comes to you guys utilizing that fleet and moving things out to your customers. How important is it to know, let your drivers know, let your managers know, hey, this is what you might run into on the roads?
Yeah, well, that's it's extremely important, and quite frankly, we don't really have a good service for doing that. You know, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but um, if we knew what was ahead of us and could change that route or change that load or bring it from another branch because we are located all over the country, it would be a huge advantage for us.
I'm gonna have to get you
Yeah.
connected with a couple of our guys who have our sonar technology because that's one of our things rolled into our FreightWaves package. Then
Yeah.
I'll give them your number. They'd
Yeah.
love to talk to you about that.
That would be great. That would be
Especially,
great.
of course,
Yeah.
as weather gets more volatile. We're heading into that spring severe weather season in Texas. And, predictions are pretty good as far as forecasting severe weather now. But what about your
hmm
customers preparing for any of those strong storms? What do they need to do to let you guys know about preparation for storm season?
Yeah. So most of our customers take this very seriously, and if you're a customer like CenterPoint in Houston, when you go through two or three of those, you learn to start preparing for them. So they have storm teams, they have storm committees, and they have an extensive storm plan that we participate in from the material and the logistics side. And there are step-by-step actions that are to take place when they engage the storm plan or the emergency operations plan.
So, as we come up on severe weather season, which for Texas and that service area that's in the kind of Central Plains area runs from about March to the beginning of June, talk to me a little bit about what your customers do in preparation for that severe weather season.
Yeah, so if you're a large utility and you have your customers affected by a hurricane, it doesn't you don't have to go through too many before you start developing a rather extensive plan to be ready for those. And they all of those customers down there have extensive emergency operation plans that they ask us to participate in from a material and logistics side of what they do. And so we meet with them regularly on the EOP plans. We tell them how we can participate, and it's mainly, I guess when you in a hurricane, when you have so many customers affected, the reason they're affected is down power lines, and they need material and they need a way to get it there quickly, and so that's where we come in.
Do you guys have plans that where you work with local municipalities when it comes to the cleanup? Like, do they do the cleanup so your guys can get in and do the fixing? Kind of how does that partnership work?
So it's normally the contractors hired by the utility and the linemen of the utility that are putting everything together, putting it back up, putting the pieces back in place, and we are just warehousing the material, delivering it to them wherever they need it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right.
So, kind of a 180 here, but one of the hot talking points of a new presidential administration is towards the pivot of renewable energy infrastructure. Um, if we
Mm-hmm.
end up making that pivot and it becomes more commonplace for wind, solar energy to take over as opposed to traditional means of energy, what would that shift towards renewables mean for the business that you guys do?
So So the that's the generation of the power, right? How it's done, whether it's a gas power plant or um, a solar field or a wind generator field. That's how it's generated. And so that power still has to get to the grid and get into the wherever it goes into the grid, get to the city or the rural community that they need the power. And so that takes material, it takes power lines. The need for those power lines won't change. Um, so we get involved in the construction of some of those solar and wind farms with from the material side, but as far as the utilities, they still have to build line to get that power to wherever they need it. So not a big change for them.
Right. That makes sense when you think
Yeah.
about it. The power
Mhm.
gets generated
Right.
from all kinds of sources, but you still got to get it from point A to
Right.
point B, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Right.
right now, a lot of the generation is focused in fracking and fossil fuels and oil that's out in the Permian Basin. Do you foresee any kind of expansion into the wind and the solar industry kind of taking over that traditional oil field type of landscape?
Well, I think a lot of that is going to be determined by this new president and what he does with regards to the oil field and the oil companies. We're already seeing with the Keystone Pipeline, he's already made a decision on that. Um, I feel like you will see a shift to renewables big time in the next certainly 2 to 4 years that he's in office. And what that does to the oil field, it's hard to say, but it typically hurts it. And we've seen that in years past. If you look at the last 100 years of the oil business and the oil patches across the country, they are extremely volatile and they run in cycles. And to me, it's just a matter of time. We've been on a high for several years now, and it's about time for a valley. So,
Everything ends up in that cyclic nature, especially when it comes to these markets like
hmm
that. What would that mean for jobs, do you think, if we do see that pivot towards renewables? And of course, you guys are still going to need your linemen, what are essentially frontline workers
hmm
for you guys to put those lines up and get that
hmm
power to people.
right, right, yeah. So, gosh, anytime the price of oil is down, the job market is in those affected areas is bad. It's a huge detriment. Um, some of that shifts to the renewables, but it's typically not a one for one switch. The unemployment it grows greatly during those times.
So we hear a lot, especially in talking to people across the transportation industry, about the emerging technology in the industry, especially when it comes to autonomous vehicles and self-driving trucks, stuff like that. And a lot of that technology is actually being tested along that I-10, I-20 corridor through New Mexico, through West Texas, and down through those straight places where there's not a lot of people on the roads. Do you foresee any utilization of that self-driving technology in the energy industry, maybe even for you guys?
So I don't, and here's why: because our drivers are so key to what we do once we get there. Um, we have piggyback forklifts on a lot of our trucks. So not sure. We do a lot of self unloading with those, so I'm not sure how that would happen. Um, if it was a self-driving truck. You never say never, right? But our people are what makes us successful. Our drivers and our warehouse people. So I don't see that happening. But I would never say never.
I've seen some of those videos of the industrial sized transformers being offloaded off flatbeds where they're essentially just put up on like almost like railroads and they just slide down off the truck. And
Hmm.
someone that's self-driving
Yeah.
definitely can't do that, at least without some massive
Yeah.
damage to the
Yeah.
machine.
That would be bad. That would be bad.
You have anything else that you want to tell us today about what's going on in Texas?
Oh, not much other than we're just busier than ever and materials harder to get than I've ever seen it because of the natural disasters that we've discussed and the fires in California and the few ice storms that we've had this winter. I could just go on, but they are turbulent times for the electrical distribution business for sure.
Absolutely. And if people want to reach out to you, maybe they've got some business that Irby can help with, where should I send them to?
Hmm. Yeah, you can have them email or call me. I'd be glad. If I can't help, I can certainly direct them in the right direction.
Awesome. Are you on LinkedIn as well? We tend to
Yeah.
direct a lot of our people towards LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today for Global Supply Chain Week, and we'll get people talking to you soon, Corby.
Okay. Thank you,
Mhm.
Kaylee.